Okay, guys. Well, tonight we have some short passages with answers. We're, of course, exploring vocabulary, word usage, sentence structure, punctuation, and meaning as well. So let's start with this first one here. It says, the largest tyrannosaurids, the family of carnivorous dinosaurs that includes Tarbosaurus, Albertosaurus, and most famously, Tyrannosaurus rex, are thought to have had the strongest bites of any land animals in Earth's history. Determining the bite force of extinct animals can be difficult. However, and paleontologists Paul Barrett and Emily Rayfield have suggested that an estimate of dinosaur bite force may be significantly influenced by the methodology used in generating the estimate. So what these guys are saying is if you use a different methodology, and here we have three different ones. We have muscular and skeletal modeling, tooth bone interaction analysis, and body mass scaling, and then a repeat of musculoskeletal modeling, the first. So the three different types. So the idea that they're suggesting is that if you use a specific type of estimate, okay, certain type of methodology, that you're going to get a different answer than somebody using a different type of methodology. Okay, so the methodologies vary in the answers that they give you. So we need to find an answer that confirms that idea, or at least gives evidence for that idea. So let's look. The study by Mears, let me just bring this back so we can see it. The study by Mears used body mass scaling and produced the lowest estimated maximum bite force, while the study by Cost et al. Used muscular and skeletal modeling and produced the highest estimate maximum. Okay, so Mears is here, body mass scaling. Nope, look at that. Did not produce the lowest estimate. See how high that is compared to the other ones? Okay, so the statement is incorrect, so A is wrong. B, in their study, Gignac and Erickson used tooth-bone interaction analysis to produce an estimated bite force range with a minimum of 8,000 newtons and a maximum of 34. Well, that's true, but it doesn't speak to the theory that estimates differ based on methodology. It's just talking about one methodology. So that answer is wrong. Doesn't support the hypothesis of these two guys. Okay, C, the bite force estimates produced by Bates and Falkingham and by Cost et al. Were similar to each other, while the estimates produced by Mears and by Gignac and Erickson each differed substantially from any other estimate. So these two use the same technique, muscular and skeletal modeling, and they came out with similar ranges for bite force. Whereas these two use totally different techniques from each other and from the other two, and they came out with completely different estimates. So the idea here that the methodology affects the estimate is supported by answer C, which is the correct answer. Okay? And we're going to move on now. 14. The number and origin of clamshell tools found at different levels below the surface of Neanderthal cave. So here's the depth, right, of where they found it in meters. So they dig down 3 to 4 meters, they find 99 tools that were collected from the beach because they were worn. You could tell they were from the beach. And 33 that were found from the sea floor because they were not worn out. And if you go deeper, they only found 1 from the sea, 1 from the beach, and 0 from the seafloor, and so on and so forth. And you get down here to 5 to 6 meters, there's a little jump. Again, more that were beach eroded and less that were from the seafloor. So let's go ahead and read this. Studying tools unearthed at a cave site on the western coast of Italy, archaeologist Paola Villa and colleagues have determined that prehistoric Neanderthal groups fashioned them from shells of clams that they harvested from the seafloor while wading or diving, or that washed up on the beach. So remember, seafloor, beach, okay? Clamshells become thin and eroded as they wash up on the beach, while those on the seafloor are smooth and sturdy. So the research team suspects that Neanderthals prized the tools made with seafloor shells However, the team also concluded that those tools were likely more challenging to obtain, noting that, and now we're going to find some choice here that supports the idea that these tools, this column, were harder to find or harder to obtain than this column. So the seafloor ones were harder than the ones that washed up on the beach. At each depth below the surface of the cave, the difference in the number of tools of each type suggests that the shells were easier to collect from the beach than to harvest from the seafloor. So if you look at it, at each depth, there are more from the beach than there are from the seafloor. So A is a good answer, right? Let's look at the next one. The highest number of tools were at depth 3 to 4, that's true, meters below the surface, which suggests that the Neanderthal population at the site was highest during the related period of time. That's true, but it doesn't speak to the issue of which tools were easier to find. So this is true, but unrelated to the theory that they have. C, at each depth below the surface in the cave, the difference in the number of tools of each type suggests that the Neanderthals preferred to use clam shells from the beach because of their durability. Well, we know that's not true because we know that the clam shells on the beach become thin and eroded. They're not durable. So C is incorrect. D, the highest number of tools at depth of 5 to 6 meters below the surface in the cave, then at depths of 4 to 5 meters below the surface suggests that the size of plant population changed over time. Okay, well, that may be true, but again, not related. The theory that we're trying to support is the difference between the numbers in this column and the numbers in this column. The only one that addresses it is A. So A is the correct answer. Okay, good. Question 15. This talks about average number and duration of torpor bouts, that means sleeping spells, and arousal episodes for Alaska marmots and Arctic ground squirrels. So this is a form of hibernation in the winter when they conserve energy by going into kind of a deep, almost a coma-like state. So torpor bouts for the marmots was 12, and for the ground squirrels was 10.5. Duration of each bout, 13 days for the marmots, 13.8, and 16 for the squirrels. Arousal episodes are in between the torpor bouts when they're awake, 11 for the marmots and 9 for the squirrels. Duration of the arousal was 21 for the marmots and only 14 for the squirrels. So there's clearly a difference here in how they hibernate. When hibernating, Alaska marmots and Arctic ground squirrels enter a state called torpor, which minimizes the energy their bodies need to function. Often a hibernating animal will temporarily come out of torpor, called an arousal episode, and its metabolic rate will rise, burning more of the precious energy the animal needs to survive the winter. Alaska marmots hibernate in groups and therefore burn less energy keeping warm during these episodes than they would if they were alone. A researcher hypothesized that because Arctic ground squirrels hibernate alone, they would likely exhibit longer bouts of torpor and shorter arousal episodes than Alaska marmots. So the longer the bouts of torpor, the less energy. The shorter the arousal periods, the less energy. So the Arctic ground squirrels, they hibernate alone, so they have to really, really conserve energy because they don't warm each other up the way the marmots do. Which choice best describes the data from the table that support this idea? So let's look at it. I'll try to show the table and the choices. The Alaska marmots arousal episode lasted for days, while the Arctic ground squirrels arousal episode lasted less than a day. So duration was 13 days, right? And the ground squirrels were 16 days. So nobody was less than a day. Okay. Excuse me, arousal episodes, 11 and 9.5. So they're days, they're not hours. Okay. So it says less than a day, it's actually 9.5 days. So that's incorrect. B, the Alaska marmots and the Arctic ground squirrels both maintain torpor for several consecutive days per bout on average. That's true, but it doesn't address the difference between them, which is really the whole point, because the squirrels need to conserve more energy than the marmots. So they have to sleep longer and wake up for shorter periods. So this is one that's true, but it's not the right answer because it doesn't address the issue. C, the Alaska marmots had shorter torpor bouts and longer arousal episodes than the Arctic ground squirrels did. Yeah, that's true. And that's actually very relevant. So if you look, their torpor bouts were shorter than the squirrels, and their arousal episodes were longer than the squirrels. And this idea is that they don't need to conserve as much energy as the squirrels do. And that's why they're able to wake up more, stay awake longer, and sleep for shorter periods of time. So the right answer is C. And we can just look at D. The Alaska marmots had more torpor bouts than arousal episodes. Is that true? Yes, it is. But their arousal episodes were much shorter than their torpor bouts. So that's also true. But is that really addressing the difference between the two? Nope. So sometimes the statement will be true, but it doesn't address the choice that basically supports the researcher's hypothesis. So something can be true, but irrelevant. And that's really where you can get fooled. You think, oh yeah, that's right. But really what you're looking for is the answer that actually supports the hypothesis. So really C is the only correct answer here. Okay, good. And we move on to 16. Ratified by more than 90 countries, the Nagoya Protocol is an international agreement ensuring that indigenous communities are compensated when their agricultural resources and knowledge of wild plants and animals are utilized by agricultural corporations. However, the protocol has shortcomings. For example, it allows corporations to insist that their agreements with communities to conduct research on the commercial uses of the community's resources and knowledge remain confidential. Therefore, some indigenous advocates express concern that the protocol may have the unintended effect of, so if the corporation is supposed to pay them for their resources, but the agreement is confidential about what they're actually giving, what the resources are, there can't be a third party, a judge, to say, well, this is fair compensation or unfair compensation, because it's all done in a way that is hidden from public view. So that's the shortage of the agreement. The corporation can hide what they're getting, and there's no third party that can make an assessment of whether they're paying adequately. So let's see which of these answers expresses that idea. Therefore, some indigenous advocates express concern that the protocol may have the unintended effect of diminishing the monetary reward that the corporations might derive. No, that's not the issue. The issue is the indigenous people not getting paid enough. Limiting the research that corporations conduct. No, that wouldn't happen just because it's confidential. Preventing independent observers from determining whether the agreements guarantee equitable compensation. There it is. So there's no third party independent observer to see whether the compensation is equitable, meaning adequate for the resources that they're taking. So C is a good answer. And D, discouraging indigenous communities from learning new methods for harvesting. No, that's not the issue. The issue is no one's watching and the corporations could cheat and pay a lot less than they should. So C is the correct answer to 16. Okay, 17. The domestic sweet potato, Ipomoea batatas, descends from a wild plant native to South America. It also populates the Polynesian islands, where evidence confirms that native Hawaiians and other indigenous peoples were cultivating the plant centuries before seafaring first occurred over the thousands of miles of ocean separating them from South America. So the sweet potatoes from South America, but there were no boats that were exchanging people or goods and services from South America to Polynesia. So how did the sweet potato get to Polynesia, if not by human traffic? To explain how the sweet potato was first introduced in Polynesia, botanist Pablo Munez Rodriguez and colleagues analyzed the DNA of numerous varieties of the plant, concluding that Polynesian varieties diverged from South American ones over 100,000 years ago. Given that Polynesia was peopled only in the last 3,000 years, the team concluded, well, basically what it means is somehow 100,000 years ago, when there were no people involved, the sweet potato found its way to Polynesia. And it didn't happen because of human beings. That's what we have to conclude, because they didn't get there until 3,000 years ago. So let's see which answer best supports that. The cultivation of the sweet potato in Polynesia likely predates its cultivation in South America. We don't know that. It doesn't say that in the passage, right? It's probably not true, but South America was inhabited long before Polynesia. Polynesian peoples likely acquired the sweet potato from South American peoples only within the last 3,000 years. No, clearly the potatoes diverged 100,000 years ago. Human activity likely played no role in the introduction of the sweet potato in Polynesia. That's the right answer. It happened 100,000 years ago when there were no people in Polynesia. So human activity played no role. That's the correct answer. And D, Polynesian sweet potato varieties likely descend from a single South American variety that was domesticated, not wild. That doesn't really matter. They diverged. Okay, so that's not really relevant. The right answer is C, human activity played no role. Okay, good. 17, atoms in a synchrotron, a type of circular particle accelerator, travel faster and faster until they blank a desired energy level, at which point they're diverted to collide with a target, smashing the atoms. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Until they blank. Is it will reach, had reached, or are reaching? Okay. Until they reach. B is the correct answer. Okay. Atoms in a synchrotron, a type of circular particle accelerator, travel faster and faster until they reach a desired energy level. Are reaching, had reached, will reach. All of these are wrong. They're all irrelevant. The only tense that you want is a present tense until they reach. They get to that point. All of these, this is past tense, that makes no sense. This is future, that makes no sense. And this is too imprecise, right? You either reach it or you don't. It's not an ongoing issue. It's a single point in time. So they reach that desired energy level. So the right answer is B. Now we move on to 19. Even though bats prefer very sweet nectar, the plants that attract them have evolved to produce nectar that is only moderately sweet. A recent study, blank why? Making sugar is energy intensive, and it is more advantageous for plants to make a larger amount of low sugar nectar than a small amount of high sugar nectar. So it's better for the plant to make a low sugar nectar. A recent study blanks why, explains why, explaining why, having explained, to explain. Okay, first of all, the study is singular, so you know the verb has to be singular, right? The study is singular. So explaining is the wrong tense. Having explained is the wrong tense. To explain is the wrong tense. The only right tense is explains. A recent study explains why. So present tense is correct here, okay? Former First Lady of the United States, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Indian activist and educator Hansa Mehta were instrumental in drafting the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document that blanked the basic freedoms to which all people are entitled. Okay? Which choice is best? A document that have outlined, a document that we're outlining, a document that outlines, a document that outline. Well, it's got to be singular, right? Because it's a singular subject. A document that outlines the basic freedoms, right? The document is still doing it. It's present tense. Okay, so all of these other tenses are incorrect. And this is for plural, not for singular. So the only right answer here is C. Good. 21. The lifespan of rockfish vary greatly by species. For instance, the colorful calico rockfish can survive for a little over a blank. The rough-eye rockfish boasts a maximum life span of 2 centuries. So the concept is vary, right? Vary by species. So the first one, the calico, survives a little over a decade, while the rough-eye rockfish can go 2 centuries. Wow, it's a big difference, right? 200 years versus 10 years. So the real question is, since all the words are the same, what should the punctuation be between these things? Okay. Should it be a colon, period, a semicolon, or a comma? Okay, if it's a colon, right, then what comes after decade has to explain what a decade is, or has to be a list. And it does neither. It actually goes on to contrast the lifespan of the two fish. So colon is incorrect because it's not an explication that comes after it of what came before, and it's not a list. So this is wrong. Period is wrong because while the rough-eye rockfish boasts a maximum lifespan of 2 centuries, it's not a sentence. So you can't have a period here because what you have left over is a sentence fragment, right? It's not a complete sentence. So it can't stand alone. The same with the semicolon. Always remember, when you have a semicolon here after decade, everything that comes after it has to be a complete sentence. The semicolon connects the two sentences, but each one is complete. So what comes after the semicolon is not a complete sentence. So this has to be wrong. The only right answer is the comma. So the right answer to 21 is D, because that phrase, while the rough-eye rockfish, is a dependent clause separated from the main body of the sentence by a comma. So D is correct. 22. The Lion light system developed by Kenyan inventor Richard Terere consists of LED lights installed around the perimeter of livestock pastures. Powered with blank, the blinking LEDs keep lions away at night, thus protecting the livestock without risking harm to the endangered lions. Okay. Which choice completes the text? Okay. So powered with energy collected, comma, by solar panels. Well, you would never have a comma there. It would be powered by energy collected by solar panels. This comma is totally incorrect. Okay. Powered by energy collected by solar panels during the day. The blinking LEDs keep lions away at night. Okay, there is no punctuation here, so it just becomes a run-on. So installed around the perimeter of livestock pastures, powered with energy collected by solar panels during the day, the blinking LEDs keep lions away at night. So you got to have a punctuation there to understand that you're starting a new thought, right? So having no punctuation is incorrect. Powered with energy collected by solar panels during the day, comma, the blinking LEDs keep lions away at night. Yeah. So the first part of that sentence is a dependent clause separated by a comma from the rest of the sentence. Okay. So you have to understand that you do need punctuation there and what the punctuation should be. You don't need commas here. You don't need commas here. These are commas that are stuck in the wrong place. All you need is a comma at the end of that dependent clause, and the clause is powered with energy collected by solar panels during the day, comma. Okay, so it's wrong to put commas in the wrong places, but when they're needed, it's wrong not to put them there. Okay, so C is the correct answer to 22. 23, material scientist Marie Agathe Charpin and her colleagues believed they could improve on the multi-component alloy NiCOCr, an equal proportions mixture of nickel, cobalt, and chromium. By replacing chromium with ruthenium, blank the alloy that resulted, NiCORu turned out to be an unsuitable replacement for NiCOCr. Okay. So they tried it, but it didn't work. So you know that a but has to be here because they're stating something positive, and then they're saying that the opposite was true. It didn't work. So there has to be a but. The other thing is you've got an abbreviation here for ruthenium. Now you see the abbreviations for nickel are in parentheses, cobalt in parentheses, right? Chromium in parentheses. So you know that one of these has to be right. The big question is, is there a comma or no comma there? See here, there's a comma. Here, there's no comma. So let's look at the actual blank. Equal proportions of mixture of nickel, cobalt, chromium by replacing the chromium with ruthenium. So definitely the Ru should come right after the name of the element, right? And then comma. But the alloy that resulted turned out to be an unsuitable replacement. or an ICOCR. So the correct answer to 23 is D. You need that comma there because this, again, starting the but is a dependent clause, okay? That's the correct answer. The progressive era in the United States witnessed the rise of numerous Black women's clubs, local organizations that advocated for racial and gender equality. Among the club's leaders, notice how the possessive is after the S because clubs are plural. Among the club's leaders, blank Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, comma, founder of the Women's Era Club of Boston. Among the club's leaders was a singular person, Josephine. Okay, so we need a singular verb, right? And it has to be in the past tense because this is witnessed, that's in the past tense. The whole thing is in the past tense. So we need something that is appropriate for singular, because Josephine is one person, and that is a past tense. So the only one that's past tense and singular is was. So A has to be the correct answer. Was Josephine St. Pierre. Okay. So there you go. Now we move on to 25. And based on genetic evidence, archaeologists have generally agreed that reindeer domestication began in the 11th century CE, Common Era. However, since uncovering fragments of a 2,000-year-old reindeer training harness in northern Siberia, comma, blank may have begun much earlier. Okay. Somebody uncovered fragments. Researcher Robert Luzzi is the guy that uncovered the fragments. So when you have a sentence like this and say, since uncovering fragments, who did the uncovering of the fragments? Researcher Robert Luzzi. That's what should come first. He's the guy that uncovered the fragments. So when you have a sentence like this, since uncovering fragments of the 2,000-year-old reindeer training harness in northern Siberia, comma, researcher Robert Luzzi, who uncovered the fragments, has argued that domestication may have begun much earlier. So that's what you want to start with here, because you got to say who's uncovering the fragments. It has to follow directly afterwards. Researcher Robert Luzzi's argument, well, the argument did not uncover the fragments, so this is wrong. Domestication did not uncover the fragments, so this is wrong. The argument researcher did not uncover the fragments. The only correct answer here is A, because Robert Luzzi is the only one that uncovered the fragments, not all of these other ones. So make sure you understand that. Since uncovering fragments, comma, Robert Luzzi argued. Okay, it's Robert Luzzi that uncovered the fragments. That's how you know that A is the correct answer. 26. Hegra is an archaeological site in present-day Saudi Arabia and was the second largest city of the Nabatean Kingdom, 4th century BCE to 1st century CE. Archaeologist Leila Nene recently traveled to Hegra to study its ancient blank into the rocky outcrops of a vast desert. These burial chambers seem to blend seamlessly with nature. Okay, so they're tombs. So we got tombs and built. The question is, what's the punctuation between them? Recently traveled to Hegra to study its ancient tombs. Okay, period. New sentence. Built into the rocky outcrops of the vast desert, comma, these burial chambers seem to blend seamlessly with nature. Yeah, end of a sentence makes sense. New thought with a new sentence, capitalized built, right? So this makes sense. Comma, if you put a comma here, you got a run-on sentence because you got two complete thoughts that are just being attached with a comma. So you don't want a comma there. Period is much more appropriate, right? Tombs and built? No, run-on sentence. You want to finish the sentence and start a new one. Tombs built, that's just you don't have any punctuation at all. Basically another run-on sentence. So you have two separate thoughts here. Archaeologist Leila Neme recently traveled to Hegra to study its ancient tombs, period. Built into the rocky outcrops of a vast desert, these burial chambers seem to blend seamlessly with nature. So the right answer to 26 is A. 27, when external forces are applied to common glass made from silicates, energy builds up around minuscule defects in the material, resulting in fractures. Recently, engineer Erkka Frankberg of Tampere University in Finland used the chemical blank to make a glassy solid that can withstand higher strain than silicate glass can before fracturing. So used a chemical compound and then names the compound. All right, chemical compound. If this was an A, used a chemical compound, then separating aluminum oxide from the word compound would be appropriate. But they uses the word the, okay? So use the chemical compound aluminum oxide. So you don't need to separate it, okay? So because this is functioning as an adjective. So the right answer here is D. So I want you to think of the chemical compound aluminum oxide. Think of chemical compound as an adjective. Okay. You could say something like the green aluminum oxide or the heavy aluminum oxide. You would not separate those adjectives from aluminum oxide. And similarly, the chemical compound aluminum oxide is not separated because the chemical compound is functioning as an adjective, okay? So what you want on this one is D, no punctuation separating aluminum oxide from compound. So the right answer to 27 is D. Okay, etched into Peru's Nazca Desert are line drawings so large they can only be fully seen from high above. Archaeologists have known of the lines since the 1920s, when a researcher spotted some from a nearby foothill, and they have been studying the markings ever since, period. Blank archaeologists' efforts are aided by drones that capture high-resolution aerial photographs of the lines. So we're going from the past to the present, and we're saying that they've been studying them ever since. What's the difference between the past and the present? In the past, they looked at them from foothills. In the present, they have high-resolution photographs from drones. So what we want to do is we want to take us from the past to the present. And the only one that really does that properly is the word currently. Currently. So we're saying that they saw them in the past, they've been looking at them ever since, and now, currently, they use drones to photograph them. Okay? So the right answer is A, currently. Okay, let's move on. 29, archaeologist Sue Brunning explains why the 7th century ship burial site at Sutton Hoo in England was likely the tomb of a king. First, the gold artifacts inside the ship suggest that the person buried with them was a wealthy and respected leader. Blank, the massive effort required to bury the ship would likely only have been undertaken for a king. So the two pieces of evidence, because remember the ship was found on land, pretty far from the water. So number one, there was gold in there, and that's fitting for a king. Number two, it takes a huge amount of people and effort to bury an entire ship. Something you wouldn't do for a peasant or a commoner, but only for a king. So the question is, what's the word that belongs here? Well, look at this word. It says first, comma, there was gold. Well, what comes after first? Second, comma. And what does it say? First and then second. So second makes perfect sense here. Instead, still specifically does not really make sense because you're giving two reasons why we think it's a king. The first reason and the second reason. So the right answer here to 29 is D. Okay, 30. The more diverse and wide-ranging an animal's behaviors, the larger and more energy demanding the animal's brain tends to be. Blank, from an evolutionary perspective, animals that perform only basic actions should allocate fewer resources to growing and maintaining brain tissue. The specialized subtypes of ants within colonies provide an opportunity to explore this hypothesis. So the less complex the behavior, the smaller the brain, okay? The less complex the behavior, the smaller the brain. From an evolutionary perspective, that makes sense. Why use all that energy to maintain a big brain when you're not even going to need it? It's a waste of energy. If you're just doing simple tasks, you don't need a big brain. So this follows from this. Subsequently, besides, nevertheless, none of those words indicate a direct relationship between this statement and this statement. This essentially leads to this. So the only right answer is thus, because it establishes that connection. If this is true, then from an evolutionary standpoint, this is why. So D is correct. The other three words don't do that. Okay. So 30 is D. 31, when designing costumes for film, American artist Sutarat Larlab typically custom fits the garments to each actor. Blank for the film Sunshine, in which astronauts must reignite a dying sun, she designed a golden spacesuit, had a factory reproduce it in a few standard sizes, lacking a tailor-made quality. The final creations reflected the ungainliness of actual spacesuits. So normally, she has them custom fit to each actor. But in this particular movie, she deliberately only had a few sizes made so they wouldn't fit perfectly. And she was trying to create the idea that it's really awkward to wear one of these spacesuits. So, nevertheless, thus, likewise, moreover. Well, here's the deal. There's a contrast here. She normally does the custom fitting. But for this film, she didn't do it. So which one establishes that contrast? Moreover, likewise, thus, or nevertheless? Well, the only right answer here is nevertheless. She normally does this. Nevertheless, comma, for this particular film, she didn't. So this is really where you have a contrast. You're explaining an exception. And that's the only word that does it. These other three words do not do that. Okay? So the answer to 31 is A. 32, while researching a topic, the student is taking the following notes. Sean Tan is an Australian author. 2008, he published Tales from Outer Suburbia, a book of 15 short stories. The stories describe surreal events occurring in otherwise ordinary suburban neighborhoods. In 2018, he published Tales from the Inner City, a book of 25 short stories. The stories describe surreal events occurring in otherwise ordinary urban settings. So 2 books describing surreal events in otherwise normal settings, both one book for the country, one book for the city, one book for the suburbs, one book for the city. The student wants to emphasize, what does the student want? A similarity between the 2 books. That's all we want. So let's look at the choices. Sean Tan's book, Tales from Outer Suburbia, which describes surreal events occurring in otherwise ordinary places, contains fewer short stories than Tales from Inner City does. Well, that's not a similarity, is it? Tales from Outer Suburbia was published in 2008, and Tales from Inner City was published in 2018. That's not a similarity. Unlike Tales from the Inner City, Sean Tan's book, Tales from Outer Suburbia, is set in suburban. That is not a similarity. Oh, wait a minute. Let's look at D. Sean Tan's books, Tales from Outer Suburbia and Tales from the Inner City, both describe surreal events occurring in otherwise ordinary places. That's a similarity. So the only right answer is D to question 32. 33, while researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. The factors that affect clutch size, the number of eggs laid at one time, have been well studied in birds, but not in lizards. A team led by Shai Marie of Tel Aviv University investigated which factors influenced lizard clutch sizes. So they want to know, what are the factors that influence the number of eggs that a lizard lays? Mary's team obtained clutch size and habitat data for over 3,900 lizard species and analyzed the data with statistical models. Larger clutch size was associated with environments in higher latitudes that have more seasonal change. Lizards in higher latitude environments may lay larger clutches, take advantage of shorter windows of favorable conditions. So if the weather is less advantageous, more of their eggs are going to die. So they need to compensate by laying more eggs. Okay, so this is the theory on the lizards, and basically this research team was trying to figure out, let's see what the student wants to say. The student wants to emphasize the aim of the research study. What is their goal? To determine the reasons for varying clutch sizes in lizards. Okay, it's been looked at in birds, but not in lizards. So what answer best answers that question of what they were trying to do? Well, let's look at A. Researchers wanted to know which factors influence lizard egg clutch size because such factors have been well studied in birds, but not in lizards. Well, there you go. That's what they wanted to do. So A is absolutely correct. No question. And I'll be honest with you, if you see the right answer and you know it's right, it's a waste of time to read these other three. And it might actually confuse you. What do they want to know? Student wants to emphasize the aim, the purpose of the study. They wanted to know which factors influence lizard egg clutch size. This is clearly the right answer. And once you know that you've got the right answer, just circle it and move on. Save yourself time. Okay, stop. All right, you're done. So now we're moving on to the vocabulary section. And let me stop sharing. And we'll pull up the vocabulary section. If I can just get the share screen. Ah, there we are. Okay, we got some good words tonight. Okay, our first word of the night is etched. E-T-C-H-E-D. Does anyone have a guess about what etched means? Okay, so it's not like drawing, it's not like painting. You have a surface and you have to dig into the surface. You can dig into the surface with a sharp instrument. You can dig into the surface with a laser. You can actually dig into the surface with acid. But the idea of etching is that you're making an image by actually altering the surface, not just painting over it or drawing over it, but actually digging into it. So I would say produced as a pattern or as a design with an acid, a laser, or a sharp tool that actually eats into the material to make the picture. Okay, that's etched. Reignite, R-E-I-G-N-I-T-E, to reignite something. Anyone have a guess? Reignite? Okay, so when you reignite something, it was ignited before and it went out. So what you're doing is you're causing something to begin to burn again. You can reignite a fire. You know, let's say you have a campfire and nobody takes care of the fire and it just kind of peters out. Well, you can reignite it by maybe throwing some paper and lighting the paper, putting a little bit of lighter fluid on it and lighting a match. You're reigniting the campfire, okay? But there's another meaning to reignite. So I would say the class that Jimmy took on impressionistic painting reignited his interest in art. So it's used metaphorically to give new life, to give new energy to something. His interest in sports was reignited by watching tennis on TV. Okay? So it's not just a literal fire. It can also mean to suddenly spur enthusiasm or interest again. Okay, callous, C-A-L-L-O-U-S. What does it mean to be callous? It's not a good thing. You don't want to be callous. Callous people are not well liked. So a callous person is hard. He feels no emotion, no sympathy for anyone. A poor widow is begging for food and he walks away. A child is cold and hungry. He walks away. He's callous. It's not a very good thing to be. The other definition of callous is hard and thickened skin, like when you're running around in your bare feet and you get this thickened skin on the bottom of your feet. It's whitish, like scar tissue almost. That's called a callus as well. And I'll explain the difference between those two. Okay, calumny. What's calumny? It's not a good thing. So you don't want to issue calumny against someone because you're being dishonest. What it means is to falsely charge someone with a crime or a sin to destroy their reputation. So you could use it in a sense like the news reporter heaped calumny upon the senator, destroying his reputation unfairly. Okay, so you're telling a story that's not true just to destroy somebody's reputation. That's calumny. Okay. Okay, camaraderie, C-A-M-A-R-A-D-E-R-I-E, camaraderie. So what is camaraderie? Soldiers have it, workers that work together have it, students in school, when they are in the same class, they have it. What it is it's a spirit of friendliness or a spirit of fellowship, brotherhood or sisterhood, where people are kind of feel like they're on the same team. They're working toward the same goal, and they're sharing that experience. That's camaraderie. It's a very positive thing. You definitely want to have camaraderie when you're working on a project together. Okay, the next one is candor. It's always good to have candor. Candor. Candor is honesty, sincerity, to be unreserved in telling the truth, to be forthright, not to hide the truth, not to hide part of the truth, not to reshape the truth to your own purposes, but just plain and simple to tell the truth, to have candor. Okay? Unembellished truth. Okay? People appreciate candor. All right, we'll move on. Carouse, Carouse. To carouse brings to mind drinking alcohol. It is kind of the unreserved and excessive intake of spirits, of booze, of alcohol. So when you're drinking too much, you tend to get a little bit out of control, and you tend to engage in too much partying. And that we call carousing. So you've seen those people, right? Well, you guys haven't yet, but you know, people at the bar that are drinking one beer after another, and they're kind of drunk, and they're singing and getting loud, and you know what I mean? That's carousing. But it generally has to do with alcohol. Okay, carp, C-A-R-P. This has two meanings. One is a fish, a carp. It's an Asian fish, actually. And now it's all over the world. You see a lot of these carps in still waters like ponds, local lakes, and they grow pretty big, and they're used as a source of food. But there's another meaning to carp, which is an adjective. Excuse me, a verb. Stop carping. Stop complaining. Stop criticizing. Don't be carping. So there's two totally different meanings to the word carp. One is a noun, the other one is a verb. Okay, good. Next one is cavort, which is not the same as carouse, but it sounds similar. C-A-V-O-R-T. To cavort is to leap and dance about in a lively manner. So somebody who's carousing may wind up cavorting. First they get a little drunk, and then they start dancing all around the room. Okay? So cavorting is to be extravagant and to be loud and lively and to do things in a way that people notice you. Like you could even say to your kid, if your kid is like going crazy, stop cavorting around the room, sit down, relax. Okay? But the words carouse and cavort are different. But they kind of can be related in certain circumstances. Okay, circumlocution, C-I-R-C-U-M-L-O-C-U-T-I-O-N, circumlocution. Now, this is an interesting word. It can mean two things. Have you ever met anybody that just can't say something simply? They have to use too many words, too many sentences to say something very simple. This is a person who's too wordy. They're not concise in the way they use language. And when you do that, it's known as a circumlocution. And so an example of that would be if I said, oh, yesterday we had a four-legged black animal with whiskers come into the house. Why don't you just say we had a cat come into the house? See what I mean? So that's a circumlocution. But the other definition of it is somebody that's trying not to tell the truth. So if the President of the United States says to you, did you or did you not leak this information to the press? And you say to the president, well, there were some people in the room, and I might have been, I don't know if I was talking too loud or they overheard. That's a circumlocution. Answer the question, did you or did you not? So there's two definitions of circumlocution. One is somebody that's too wordy, that can't just concisely say something. And the other one is someone that's a little bit trying to hide the truth, doesn't really want to answer the question. Okay? So the two words that we picked today for etymology, the first is circumlocution, because it's a great word. Now, it's from the Latin. Circum is the first part, right? And what does it mean? It means around or in a circle, right? You're not going directly at it. You're kind of going around it. And then locution comes from Latin, which means speak, locutium. So you're speaking around something. And that's what circumlocution means. Now, there are a lot of words that have circum in it. Circumnavigate means to go around the world, circumnavigate the world. Circumference, right, which is the perimeter of a circle. Circumvent, to get around something. We circumvented the need to get on Highway 80, which had a traffic accident, by taking Highway 61. So the word circum is used in many, many instances to circumscribe something, is to draw around it, right? So circum is used in many different words and basically means in a circle or to go around something. Locution is also used in a bunch of words. Elocution. He had excellent elocution. Elocution means pronunciation, how you pronounce words, the manner in which you deliver words orally. That's elocution. And students will study elocution so that they can learn to pronounce words properly. Okay. Another word is interlocution. Interlocution is a dialogue between two people. Inter means from one to the other, and locution is to speak. So interlocution is two people talking. And loquacious, which is spelled with a Q, but is derived from locution, is somebody who talks too much. If you're loquacious, that means you never know when to shut up. All of those words come from the Latin locutienum, which means speaking or a speaking. So you have two parts of this word that are both very interesting, and both of them are used in many, many modern English words. Okay. The second one is a little simpler, but it actually has a cute twist. Callous, C-A-L-O-U-S. Remember we said that it means basically being hard-hearted, having no emotion, having no sympathy, no empathy for anyone, not caring about other people. Callous, right? Well, this comes from the Latin callosus, which means thick-skinned. Thick-skinned, okay? But for centuries, all it meant was that you had a hard skin in a place, like a callus on your foot. It wasn't until the 1670s in the English language that somebody started using the word callous to mean hardened heart, metaphorically unfeeling, unsympathetic. So it started as a physical description of something solid, like thickened skin on the foot, a callus. And then it was transformed into a metaphorical idea of somebody that had a hardened heart that could feel no emotion for other people. But here's the kicker. They're spelled differently. When you have a callus on your foot, right, because you ran around in your bare feet, it's C-A-L-L-U-S with no O. But when you're a callous person, it means that you don't care about other people. You walk away when someone's suffering. So even though both of those words have the same origin in Latin, the spelling has diverged, and one takes on the physical meaning of thickened skin. That's the US ending. The other one is a metaphorical meaning of a hardened heart or someone who's unfeeling. So if you're going to use the word callus to describe something on the foot, like thickened skin on the foot, you end it with US, C-A-L-L-U-S. But if you're going to use a callus to describe someone's behavior or someone's attitude, C-A-L-O-U-S, even though the origin is the same in Latin. Okay? Anybody have any questions? Okay, guys, we finished a little early tonight, but we got a lot done. So we will see you next week. Everyone have a great week. And congratulations on your summer vacation. That's awesome. Take care, everyone.